County Democratic Party held its regular monthly meeting on September 30th, and we had the privilege of hearing from South Carolina Representative Jermaine Johnson as he has formed an exploratory committee considering running for the governor of South Carolina. We sincerely hope that you find this helpful in getting to know who he is and why he is running for this office. Here now is South Carolina Legislative Representative Jermaine Johnson.
Before I get into everything, I need to give everybody kind of a background about who I am and why I fight for things the way that I fight for. So I want everybody in here to think about the very first memory of their life. Think about the very first memory of your life. The very first memory of my life, I was waking up. I was about 4 years old, four going on 5. And I was waking up, and I heard my older brother down the hall. He was crying. And as a little young kid, you know, you kind of get nosy, and you walk down that hall, and you're being nosy to go see what's going on. And I opened up the door. My dad was spanking my older brother. So my older brother had been skipping school. My father had 3 kids, my mother had 3 kids, and they came together and they had 3 kids. So I kind of grew up with an older brother and a younger brother, and as a kind of a middle child. And when my older brother was screaming down the hall and I was being nosy and I saw my dad spanking my older brother, I was like, nah, let me go ahead and, let me mind my business because, I don't want to be next. Your parents like, nah, mind your business. I'm gonna mind my business. I go back to my room, I go to sleep. I woke up the next day and I can see my brother walking down the street. And that was the last time I saw my brother. My brother ran away from home then. And the person who was his best friend who helped him run away from home shot and killed him. This started my upbringing. My upbringing was, I was born in the 80s, and in the 80s, anybody here remembers the 80s, it was the crack epidemic. The crack epidemic came through my family, and it hit us pretty hard. Going through that situation is my family got clean from that, but they traded in one addiction for another addiction. They traded it in for gambling. And when the gambling addiction hit our family really hard, it had us living in motels. I lived in a lot of motels. I lived in a Motel 6. I lived in a travel lodge, and I lived in this place called the Evergreen Motel. I lived in all those poverty-stricken with the drugs and prostitutions and all different types of things. I lived there. I went to 7 different high schools. And coming up, I was a really good basketball player. See, my other older brother, he was a fantastic basketball player also. And my older brother, he did some things and he ended up going to jail for 6 years. And my AAU coach, he said, Jermaine, we got to get you out of your environment. We got to get you out of here. So they sent me to a prep school in upstate New York. And I get to this prep school in upstate New York, and that was the first time I'd ever seen snow before. So I said, what is this stuff here? It's cold, right? I don't know what this stuff is. First time I had ever seen stars in the sky. I had never seen lots of stars in the sky. It's also the first time I ever seen people wearing shirts and ties and jackets and things. And the first time I realized that my norm wasn't everybody else's norm. That what I was going through wasn't what everybody else had been going through. And I realized that I didn't want to have to go back to my environment. So going through there, I said, I got to do some things. And I remember the day that I got my SAT scores back, and I knew the score was high enough, and I knew I was going to be able to go to college. Man, I ran around that school campus telling them, man, I'm going to college. I was so excited because I knew that my life was going to change. Things were going to be different. I ended up graduating from a prep school in Massachusetts. And after I got down to Charleston, that's when I got introduced to sweet tea. Lord, I love that stuff. Lord, I love that stuff. But when I got in there, I was still considered a homeless student because I didn't have anywhere else to go. So while I was at college, when all my teammates were going home for Christmas and Thanksgiving and going to be with family members, on those special holidays, I was sleeping in the dorm rooms. Or I was sleeping in the locker rooms, or I was sleeping, going to stay on people's couches, or just visiting different people because I had nowhere to go. And I still ended up, getting my good education at College of Charleston. I met this beautiful, beautiful woman at the College of Charleston, who now is my wife, right? And we have been married. We've been together for 15 years now. And I ended up graduating College of Charleston. I got drafted to go play professional basketball in the NBA D-League. Then from there, I went to go play professional in Brazil, Canada, Portugal, and Mexico. While I was overseas, my older brother was released from prison. And when he got released from prison, he was a fantastic basketball player, like I said. He went to junior college, won 2 state championships, and was a fantastic basketball player. He tried to turn his life around. Then he tried to get a job. When he tried to get a job, because he had that background, he couldn't get a job. Nobody gave him an opportunity. Nobody wanted to give him a chance. So I was talking to my coach over in Mexico. I said, hey coach, I got a brother that's a fantastic basketball player. Can you give him a tryout? Can you give him a shot? My coach agreed. Flew him out to Mexico. He made the team. Tried out, made the team. I was like, man, I was able to get my brother a professional basketball contract and give my brother a second opportunity in life. Then in 2015, I was on a team in a place called Okinawa, Mexico. He was on another team down in the middle of Mexico. And I had just lost the game, and I'm sitting outside my apartment, and I'm thinking, like, man, what could I have done better to help me win this game? I'm just thinking outside and sitting there. I got a call from my friend named Steve. Steve says, Jermaine, what's going on? I said, man, I'm just sitting outside thinking about this game, but I could have done better. He says, I don't know how to tell you this, man, but your brother died last night. I said, what are you talking about? I said, don't play with me like that. He says, I wouldn't play with you like that. Your brother died last night, along with 4 other of your friends. 5 people died in a car accident, and I had to fly from where I was at in Mexico to the part of Mexico where the accident happened to go identify my brother's body and my friends. It's a vision I will never get out of my mind ever, something I can never unsee. But that's when I decided to retire from basketball, because by that time I had a wife, I had children, I needed to come home to be a father, to be a husband to my family. I got home, but when I got home, it was not a smooth transition, because it was almost like I had PTSD. I was dealing with issues because when my bank account would get to a certain amount, I would get anxiety. I start sweating. I couldn't sleep at night because I was so concerned about being homeless again and having my children be homeless, having my family go through situations. I just couldn't understand what to do. And because I was going through all these situations, these personal attacks, it almost drove me and my wife down a path to divorce. And we decided to go to counseling. We said, let's go to counseling. So we went to counseling with my pastor. And my pastor talked to us, and he counseled us. And he took a liking to me. And he said, Jermaine, I want to meet with you one day. And I met with my pastor. He drives me around Richland County. He showed me all the different businesses and these places that he was involved with. And during that time, that's when the light bulb just went on. It was like those cartoons, like with a light bulb on the top of the head, it was like, ding! I said, I'm gonna start a nonprofit organization to help out formerly incarcerated individuals, military veterans, and young people to help them get a second opportunity, sometimes a first opportunity at employment and life skills and soft skills development. See, because while I was playing basketball overseas, I continued studying. I got my master's and my doctorate degree. So I wrote this curriculum. I went around to different businesses. I said, hey, listen, I've got this curriculum, and I'm going to start helping people out. If these people come through my program, will you give them a shot? Will you give them a job? Will you give them an opportunity? I took that same curriculum, and I went to USC, and I got it sponsored by USC, so anybody that came through my program would get CEUs coming through my program. And I went all around, and I got different contracts with different businesses who agreed with the mission that I was trying to do. And I came across an organization called the Midlands Fatherhood Coalition. And they said, Jermaine, man, we love you. We love what you're talking about here. Would you like to work here? I said, okay. I took the job. And I started working for the Fatherhood Coalition. And when I got in there, I started helping a lot of men to become better fathers in the lives of their children. And then I helped this young guy. See, this young guy I used to play basketball with, he had just graduated Coker College. And he needed a job. And so I said, man, send me your resume. He sends me his resume. I tweaked it up a little bit, and then I gave it to my supervisor. My supervisor hired him. He comes to work one day after working there for a few months, and he's upset. And I'm like, man, why are you mad? What's going on? He says, man, I just been stopped 3 times in 3 days by the police. They searched me, and they let me go. They gave me a ticket of 1 or anything. I said, man, well, did you report that? He said, no, we don't report those types of things in my community, because if we do that, we end up with a target on our back, and we end up getting harassed. I said, that's not right. Well, coincidentally, we were having an event in my community about bridging the gap between police and the community. And I go to this event, and I'm sitting up there, there's a panel of police officers, and they're up there talking about how they have this fantastic community policing in our community. How they don't have issues in our community, how they just do a great job and have this respect. And I'm sitting out there, and I'm just so upset. I'm mad, because I'm like, I just talked to this young person who said what y'all did to him. And I come up to the podium, and I say, y'all say you don't have this problem in this community. Y'all say we don't have these types of things. And they're like, no, we don't have these types of problems. I said, well, you're lying to me, because I just talked to a young person who said what y'all did to him and said how y'all treated him. And I went on to chastise the police. After I got done talking, I got a standing ovation. I was like, oh my gosh. As I'm leaving this room, I get a tap on my shoulder, and this gentleman says, Jermaine, you're exactly what we need. You're the future. You're a young guy. These people, they love you. These young people, they look up to you because you've been on the Richland County Recreation Commission. You're involved with everything, and they see you as a positive example. And that person was State Representative Joe Neal. State Representative Joe Neal was very instrumental in getting that Confederate flag off the dome of our State House. He became my political mentor. I credit him with discovering me and all the politics that I do. And if you fast forward to 2019, I started working for the presidential candidate, Andrew Yang, when he was running for president around. And I looked at my state representative, and I went to go meet with him, and I said, sir, I'm considering, I want to succeed you after you retire. I never wanted to run against anybody. I said, sir, I want to succeed you. He said, Jermaine, I don't believe succession plan. See, my state representative was literally 50 years older than me. 50 years older than me. And when he said, I don't believe succession planning, that was when I knew that I was gonna have to run against him. Because I looked at him, he was literally 83 years old at the time. And I looked at him and I said, what does this 83-year-old man have in common with my 7-year-old daughter? How can he inspire her about a future that he literally was not gonna be a part of? And I decided to run for office. But you gotta imagine what happened when I announced that I was gonna run for office. You're too young, Jermaine. You're too inexperienced. You're being disrespectful. You need to wait your turn. You should drop out. You're too black. When I decided to jump out there, I did what I had to do anyways, and senators came out against me. They did radio ads, they sent flyers, school board members, the sheriff, everybody you can think of, house members, they did all the different things against me. But I still kept my faith. I still kept doing what I had to do. I was calling houses and the kids would answer the phone, oh yeah, this is Jermaine from the gym. We know him. He's always in the gym hanging out with us. So everybody knew who I was. And I did that anyways, and then I was an adjunct professor at Wilson University at the time. So on the night of the election, the primary, I didn't have a watch party. I was in my office teaching the class, and I started getting phone calls and text messages coming in. They were like, Jermaine, you won. You got 76% of the vote. I knew it was something special because on that day, when I was going to the polls, people were holding his signs, but still telling me, I just voted for you. I was like, all right, so we're good to go. But I'm sitting a 22-year incumbent to become the first black and the youngest to ever represent House District 80. My seat got gerrymandered, I had to run again, and I had to beat another incumbent. And then my district split up again, so now I've been the representative to represent 3 different districts in 3 different terms. District 80, District 70, now House District 52. But that's not the real testimony in here. The real testimony, y'all, is that I went from homeless to the State House. I went from homeless to the State House, which is why I talk to so many young people today, to tell them I don't care what your mama said. I don't care what your daddy said. I don't care what your pastor said. I don't care what your teacher said. I don't care what anybody said. If you want to do something, if you have a dream, if you have aspirations, you can do it. And if somebody tells you you can't do it, you tell them, no, Dr. Johnson was able to do it. You look at me as a shining example of who you can be and who you will be. And I expect you to be great. I demand you to be great. I want you to do the best that you can do because I'm depending on you to stand up, to speak out, and take back the democracy that we have lost thus far. It is time for young people to stand up and take the reins and be the leaders that we know they've been called to do. Now, in this state right now, 22 years we've been under Republican leadership. 22 years. They have the House, they have the Senate, they've got the governor's mansion, they've got agriculture, they've got education. In this past session, they've got a supermajority in the House, they've got a supermajority in the Senate, and everything else. So what that truly means, if you don't understand, that means I don't even have to show up to the State House and they can pass any law that they want, anything that they want to do. But what that also means is if they truly cared about you, they would have fixed these problems already. If they truly cared about you, they would have fixed those potholes that are out there on that street. If they cared about you, they would have restored women's reproductive rights. If they truly cared about you, they would have fully invested in public education. If they truly cared about you, they would have done something about the over 600 unsolved murders in this state just since 2020. If they cared about you, they would be acting like they care about you, but they don't. They don't care about you. They care more about business than they care about bodies. They care more about economics than they care about everybody. And it's time to put the priorities back on the people of South Carolina. It is time to start fixing these problems, time to start addressing these problems, and it's time to start talking about the least of these. Now, the issue that we have now in this state, our current governor, he's talking about the GDP and how amazing it is and all this other stuff about business, and we're open for business. But what about the homeless person sleeping in the park down the street? What about that single mom working 2 jobs and now her kid's at home without a parent? What about all these individuals who are dealing with these situations going on? What about the fact that we have women in these disparities and they are losing their lives just by bringing forth life? See, I've got a bill 3412. It's called the Joint Committee on Women's Reproductive Rights. I have this radical thought that women are smart enough to make their own decisions. Apparently, I'm in the minority on that, right? And this bill, the Joint Committee on Women's Reproductive Rights, what it would do is it would have Republican women and Democrat women come together, create something of a foundation for women's reproductive rights, then present it to the General Assembly, and then let fathers and men come in and say, hey, what about this for fathers, what about this for men? Because myself, I've got 4 children, and I was been in that delivery room, and the men in here who are fathers, y'all know what that's like. You're in that delivery room, and you're nervous, and you're sweating, and you don't know, but you're trying to keep your wife comforted, you're trying to make sure that she's okay. And my wife, she's telling me, she said, Jermaine, can you please advocate for me if this happens? Can you please do this if this happens? And we're praying and we're trying to make sure that everything's gonna be okay. My wife, she's nervous and I'm trying to calm her down. But during that time, never once did I think that I would die based on my wife giving birth. Not once. But during that time, my wife was scared that she was gonna lose her life by bringing forth life. Because of that alone is why the foundation must come from women. Because it affects you more than it affects me. You are literally putting your life on the line to bring forth the population that's going to continue to make this country great. That's going to do the fantastic things that we need. And that's why women's reproductive rights must come from women. Now, with that being said, I've got plenty of plans, plenty of ideas for this state, but I've been traveling this state for the past year and a half, going to different counties. I've been to over 20 counties thus far, just to hear from the people. Because I don't believe in giving you a platform. I want you to give me one. I want to hear from the people. You tell me what's important to you. You tell me what the things you want me to run on. You tell me how you want me to represent you, because I am your servant. You're not mine. I'm not here to choose my constituents. You are here to choose your governor. You're here to choose your representative. You're here to choose the individuals that lead you. And with that being said, I just want to make sure that everybody in this room is involved. I want to make sure that everybody in this room will stand up and be counted, because it's time for us to say enough is enough. It's time for us to say no more. It's time for us to stand up and be counted to make sure that we can take back our state and make it the best for all of us and the least of these. Thank y'all so much.
We at the GCDP hope you have found a good benefit from this information. If you have, please share the link with others. If you are willing and able to help in getting more Democrats elected into office, please check out the GCDP website at greenvilledemocrats.com. You can fill out the volunteer form, you can take a look at upcoming events listed on the calendar, or read the latest info about how political machinations will impact you directly. You can also follow us on any of our social media profiles shown here. It is critical that you get engaged in our political process while we still have the opportunity. Let's keep Greenville County progressing in a positive direction. Thanks for listening.